Chrono Odyssey is an upcoming MMORPG that's set to release at the end of 2025. And thanks to the new dev interview that just dropped this weekend, we got a ton of new info, plus some juicy gameplay footage. And yeah, as expected, people are getting hyped about Chrono, because a lot of what we saw honestly just looks really great. To get you even more hyped, we're gonna take all the little bits and pieces from that gameplay footage and break it down, especially to understand how the different systems work. Because even though we only saw a few short clips, there's actually a lot of information hidden there. And in this video we are starting to analyze the gathering and crafting system. So first of all, they said that gathering and crafting will play a huge role in Chrono. A lot of gear and items will come from crafting, and it seems like it will be a major part of the game's economy. And here Chrono follows a pretty classic MMO setup. You've got your gathering, you have your refining, and then you got your crafting. So you gather your ore, refine it into ingots, and then you craft some gear from it. Pretty straightforward. Let's start with the gathering. We actually got a pretty good look here at the gathering tools in the game. You've got a sickle for harvesting, pickaxe for mining, a logging axe for chopping wood, a butcher knife for butchering and probably also for skinning, and a fishing rod obviously for fishing. And then there's a campfire, which is probably more for cooking, which is obviously not a gathering profession. So yeah, we've got our 5 classic gathering professions here. Okay, so from the gameplay footage, a lot of people will probably immediately notice the similarities between Chrono and New World. And I will bring that comparison up a lot in this video, because there are just so many similarities in the gathering and crafting system between New World and Chrono. And honestly, copying New World's crafting system is actually not a bad idea. It's literally one of the few things that New World actually did pretty well. Okay, so in the footage you can also see that after gathering a node, the player levels up. They mentioned this in the interview that you can reach max level just by crafting and gathering, which I think is really cool. So if that's the only thing you enjoy, you can totally just do that. Now we don't see here any gathering experience popping up after we mine this ore here, for example. But since we have 5 different tiers of resources and also 2 worlds, it's pretty clear that there is some kind of progression system. You probably need a higher gathering mastery to then use the better tools, to then harvest the higher tier resources. So similar to a lot of other MMOs. Let's talk about the life masteries. That's just simply how they call their crafting professions. The first one we know is called processing. So if we look here on the processing workshop UI, you can see at the top several different tabs. And all these tabs belong to the processing category. So when you create a tool, for example, you gain processing mastery experience. But additionally, you can see that you also gain swordman experience. That's because, again, you can level up your character through gathering and crafting too. So in this case, the character class is probably a swordsman, and he gets experience for crafting this tool, which I think is pretty nice. Now, processing includes more than just tool creation. It also covers the refinement of raw resources, like turning ore into ingots. So all of those jobs fall under the processing mastery. So you don't have a separate smelting skill or anything like that. It's just one category. The concept of refining material isn't anything new. Lots of MMOs do that. But looking at the UI and the icons, for me, it just screams New World. Maybe I just played too much New World in the past. Let me know in the comments if I'm just really crazy. But one thing I did notice, and this is different from New World or something like Albion, is that to create an ingot, you only need 5 of the same ore. You don't need to mix that with lower tier ingots or anything like that. In games like Albion or New World, you often need those lower tier components too. I kinda like it that it's simpler, making crafting not unnecessarily complicated by forcing you to collect 20 different mods just to craft one simple ingot. That said, maybe the footage is just a little bit older, we will see. So there's also a tab called Resource, where you can craft things like grit and oil. So for example, processed oil here is used for making cloaks. So those are probably just additional crafting materials needed for certain gear. Speaking of gear, let's move on to the next life mastery, armor crafting. So obviously this is the place where you can craft all your armor pieces. Again, we have got here 5 tiers of armor. And in the footage, they are crafting a piece of plate armor. So let's take a closer look, because this is really interesting. So first of all, it's a tier 5 item. So the equipment score ranges between 40 and 50. And then you got some fixed base stats that come from the armor type itself. So probably every gear piece always has some fixed stats. Then there's a chance for a Jura socket, a chance for a prefix, which are just your classical attribute points, and a chance for 3 general traits. So after crafting, we can see the result was a plate armor with a gear score of 44, our fixed base stats, some random attributes, and 3 random traits. And yes, I'm gonna say it again, this is very New World. And while I do like the gathering system in New World, the crafting system had some serious flaws. One of the biggest complaints early on in New World was the insane randomness when dropping gear or crafting gear. And here, the gear score, the attributes, the trait was all random. Only the base stats are fixed. And honestly, that's exactly what people hated in New World. Eventually, they added a lot of systems to reduce the randomness of those crafts. But even if you can log 1 or 2 stats here on your item, you still end up crafting the same item over 100 times till you get your perfect roll. Now, how bad this system actually will be will depend on how many different trade options exist. But we can already see that there are PvP trades, PvE trades, and even neutral trades. I will go deeper into that in my next video, but man, please don't give me an item with both PvE and PvE trades. That's just so dumb and so annoying. That would be really New World all over again. I just really hope they only took the good parts from New World and just learned from their mistakes. Okay, but let's rewind a little bit and see what kind of materials have been used here. As we can see, it's pretty simple. Some ingots, some lumber, and an optional material, which is called Superior Arc. And as it seems, this optional material you also get from gathering. We're actually seeing being gathered in the mining club. It's not exactly the same item, but pretty close. And that could mean that all crafting mats will likely to be gatherable, which is, I think, really great. Overall, I think it looks clean and simple, which I really like. Just don't give me a million different materials just for crafting. And so that's all we have seen so far from armor crafting. We haven't seen any other life masteries yet, but I think it's safe to assume that we will also have a weapon crafter for our weapons, jewelry crafter for our jewelry sockets, and also our accessories. And we will probably also have like some kind of cooking profession for food and potions. But that's everything we know for now about the gathering and crafting system in Chrono. But I think it already gives us a pretty good and solid idea of what to expect from these systems. And honestly, I'm pretty happy with how it looks so far, but yeah, I just hope they learned from New World's mistakes, took the good parts and even improved on them. But what do you think? Are you excited about the crafting system, or were you hoping for something completely different, something completely new maybe? Let me know in the comments. In the next video, we will talk a little bit more about the gear, itemization and progression of your items. So if you don't want to miss that, you better subscribe. Thanks for watching and see ya in the next one.